What is the bridge and what is the history behind it?
In the, I think it was like late 80s or 90s, early 90s, the Henry Avenue Bridge was bolted, and apparently there was a lot of run-ins with the police back then. The police would come in and like run the guys out, but it was Gunks training. They wanted to like find something to train. There, it's a beautiful piece of architecture. There are these huge sandstone blocks, like 3 feet high by 4 feet, 5 feet wide. So you can be grabbing somewhat like normal like features on real rock on sandstone. they're they're pretty much vertical and they can go up to 70 feet. And there
Wow.
were dozens of climbs. They go into these arches, and they had bolted holds drilled into the concrete, because above a certain point it was concrete, not these sandstone blocks. And you had these massive things that would go up and then go into the arch in the middle. And there was probably a 514 there. It never got sent. Multiple 12s, there were 13s. But the city came in maybe 10 years ago and chopped everything out.
When did you first start developing boulders or routes in the Wissahickon, and what made you interested in developing?
So I had moved back to the city for medical school in 99. And in the year two, I was just running the trails. I moved to Germantown because I was going to Temple Medical. And I just started seeing, I saw boulders. First place I saw, I think, was Lincoln Drive. There were these cool outcroppings, and that's where most of the most highest concentration of development, and that's the highest concentration of a resource of boulders. But there's dozens and dozens of problems right along the Lincoln Drive running trail. So I saw those and I started developing those probably in 2000. And my reason was there were no climbing gyms. There was PRG, Reach and Cliffs and all like the resources we have now, and Tupas were not there. You had PRG and Oaks. And for a medical student without a lot of time, fighting traffic during, I'd be in class all day, and then to fight traffic out to Oaks might take you an hour and a half to get there, and then to get a session it wasn't really worth it. So if I could take a 10-minute drive into the park and do some bouldering for an hour and then get back to studying, that was ideal. So for me, it was kind of a necessity. I wanted to climb, I wanted to train, I wanted to stay involved, but Oaks was a little bit far for a medical student. I still went there, but I'd get there like once every 2 weeks. So that's the reason I started looking for it and climbing there regularly.
Who helped you put this stuff up? Who was the crew?
A lot of the times I would go by myself, but who showed up that summer was a guy named Matt Snyder, who was 2 years. We actually went to high school together, and he was 2 years below me. So he had just graduated. I think I was my second year of medical school. He finished college, and then we ran into each other, I think at Livezy or something. And I was like, hey man, I've been finding these areas along Lincoln Drive. So he started climbing with me down there, Matt Snyder. And then he brought a friend, and I don't know how he met. There was a guy named Josh Newman who was like super strong. I think he was like a V10 climber. I was like it was a medical school. So I was like a V4, V5 maybe climber at the time. And Newman was like pulling hard, and Snyder was pulling hard. So they started doing contrived problems that I couldn't do. So they were helping me develop the areas a little bit, but they were and Newman I think lived near the park, so he was finding areas. Some of the chalk that I found might have been Newman's, but I don't know. It's hard to tell the age of chalk. So I know that Newman did a lot of development, or he explored the areas. I don't think he cleaned as much poison ivy as I did.
Only you were crazy.
I know Newman and the medical students, so my time was like really limited. If I could meet up with these guys, great. But a lot of the times it was just me going out on times when I was able to squeeze something in. So I did do a lot of alone bouldering in the park.
Nice. Just took your hedge trimmers and just went crazy on some ivy.
That's exactly right. And then I'd bring it home to my wife, and she'd get upset with me.
You got poison ivy? You'd bring it home?
Clothes and so forth. She's much more allergic. I'm allergic. She's more allergic. So she would end up getting a big outbreak, and I just get a little bit of itching here and there.
Oh, yeah.
Got me in a little trouble.
I'm crazy allergic. If I even say poison ivy, I get a crazy outbreak.
Well, I've cleaned it for you.
Have you noticed any differences in the amount of people now climbing outside at the Wiss? Is it a good thing that it's getting so populated?
Yeah, I've seen more people. So I explored a guidebook years ago. I bought a website when I first started developing when I was a resident. So this was like 2004, 2005. I made an online guidebook. And I just like bought you could like buy websites for like $20 a year. And I made it. And in about 3 years, there were 300 hits.
Wow.
So that was nothing. I was like, you know what? This obviously isn't popular. I never really saw an increase in traffic in the park. It was just me and Matt Snyder and Josh Newman and the people that we would bring. And I would say in the last 5 years, there's been an uptick. And I would say in the last 4 months, since the guidebook came out, I've been seeing people all over the place. So, I think that's a great thing. I've always wanted, it's a fun place. It's right in the middle of the city. There's easy access to these boulders. They're not huge high balls. You won't find anything super hard in the park. There's nothing like harder than V9, I would say. But there's lots of moderates with easy top outs, or you're just jumping from the lip with flat landings. Mm-hmm. So it's a great place for, city climbers to get out and be able to train. And I'm glad. I've always wanted to see the park filled with people. It's not too crowded. You'll always be able to get on things because a lot of the boulders are spread out throughout the park. We have to some of the boulders we have to share the trail with the bikers who bike by. And in my view, I am a mountain biker, so I can say this. They can be a little bit obnoxious as they bike by and yell at you when they've got like 6 feet of trail to go by, and they yell at you for having your pad taking up about 3 feet of trail.
Yeah.
So I've had some interesting interactions with the bikers.
What are the most interesting reactions you've had from others on the trail?
I had a biker. I had my kids with me, and a biker said, they always bike past you and then turn around and yell at you. They don't stop and have a conversation about. He said, "Kids not on a leash, that's crazy." And I was like,
"What?"
So.
Sounds like I needed to be put on a leash.
Yeah.
What is your proudest contribution to the entire Philly area, and what is your proudest send?
So probably my proudest contribution would actually be outside of the Wissahickon, would be the discovery of the Lorimere boulders, which are in Montgomery County. So I discovered those in 2005 and spent a year on them and could link a couple of moves. I was a resident at the time, so I was a senior resident when I had found them and was climbing once a week maybe because it was just busy time. I'd been married, I had a son, and eventually Josh Newman, who had moved out of the area for grad school, came back, and I saw him at the climbing gym, and this was the strong guy that I told you about that was helping me develop the other things. So I told him about it, and he went out the next weekend, and Paul Robinson just happened to be home from college. So the two of them went out there and like sent everything. And he called me and he's like, man, thanks for telling me about that place. And like all those things are 5-star. They're really like hard. They were saying like, I think they've been downgraded, but they were, saying like V9, V10, maybe even V11. And he said, I said, wow, those great. No wonder I can't do it. And he motivated me. He said, like, I've seen you climb. I think you could do it. You used to be in better shape. Agreed. But, back in the day, you'd have been able to do those things. So I was like, wow, Josh thinks I could do those things. So this was actually, kind of cool. Climbing for me was always something you just did for fun. I never trained to climb. And I thought it motivated me. I started like a diet. I got on like a diet. I was never like overweight, but like I was able to like shed 5-10 pounds. And I trained for a year and a half. I actually trained a lot on Lincoln Drive, and I'll share like what I love about the Wissahickon is part of it is so good for training. But I trained for about a year and a half and like really projected it and sent everything there in a day, which from a guy who was like a V6 climber to like being able to like send all 3 of those projects in a day, which probably go around V9, maybe the hardest thing there, was my proudest moment.
Yeah.
Taught me how to train, got me motivated. And I went from being a guy who was kind of content to just climb V5, V6 to say, I think I can climb harder than this.
And you did. That's a hard circuit, man.
Yeah. And I was like 36 at the time. So like that was like a big deal. Starting to train for projects at 36 and being a father of, I think I was a father of 2 by that time.
There it is. Dad strength.
Dad strength.
You got dad strength. That helps a lot.
It does.